Hello and welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing on Friday morning after midnight. Joining us from TD Garden, where we had a sad trombone for the Indiana Pacers Boston Celtics series, Tim Bontemps.
Hello, everybody. Got a spare hamstring lying around? Might be useful.
You could probably get some good prices for those at various times. AOG Anunoby tried to buy a secondhand hamstring. It didn't work out so well. Joining us from a couple of floors. I wonder if you're above or below me. I'll bet I'm on a higher floor than you. Here in Minneapolis is Ben MacMahon.
Howdy, partners. Really don't need the symbolism here and the hotel room assignments. We can leave your snobbishness for another time.
Well, I didn't get upgraded. So I'm in a very, very basic room and you're in a suite.
How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel
Clearly
under
very
six.
perturbed because it's the second time it's come up on the pod in 3 days.
Makes me feel under 6 foot. There's, the last pod, I didn't even know what room I had, Bontemps. So don't say that.
The group chat, there was some whining though.
Yeah, so then it was the group chat.
Not whining.
I knew it came up.
I was just saying. All right. So this was a once promising night, I thought. And then the Celtics go on a 17-0 run in the second quarter, which sort of establishes the game. And then Bontemps, Tyrese Haliburton leaves the game in the third quarter, and I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, he's out with a sore hamstring, same hamstring he hurt against the Celtics 4.5 months ago, back in January when he slipped and fell on the court in Indy. And I mean, look, I think the series is over. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Tyrese Haliburton plays. The guy left the conference finals game with a muscle injury. Find it hard to believe he's going to come back in the next few days. I thought it was incredibly odd that Rick Carlisle threw in the towel in this game with 10 minutes to go.
Thank you. We're in the era where double-digit comebacks in the fourth quarter are common, even long shot comebacks. And what was the score at the beginning? It was 13.
It was between a 10 and 15 point game for virtually the entire fourth quarter. And Carlisle just essentially decided not to finish the game. His answer was, I wanted to look at some guys that I thought needed to look. McDermott went in there and played well. Isaiah Jackson brought a lot of fight to the game. Jalen Smith hasn't had the best opportunity to play in the playoffs. We weren't giving up, but it was an opportunity to get some energetic, fresh guys in there to fight. Guys who had played to that point, Pascal was very tired. Aaron Nesmith had 4 fouls, and he was tired. So that was it. I don't really buy that answer.
I mean, the fourth quarter of game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals is like a nice little preseason type of opportunity.
Look, this is how I take it. Okay. Tyrese Haliburton was ruled out basically at the start of the fourth quarter for the game. I think the Pacers basically said, this is just a guess. I didn't ask them, but the only way I can read this is we're not winning this game. Tyrese isn't playing. We're going to have to play everybody 45 minutes or more in game 3. That's our whole season. We're going to save everybody's legs as much as possible, and we're going to throw everything at game 3. If we win game 3, the series at least gets to game 5. Maybe we can get Haliburton back at some point. If we lose game 3, the series is over anyway. That's the only reason. That's the only thing I can look at from it, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's strange, but how can you have any level of optimism on this Haliburton situation?
You can't.
It's an aggravation of a hamstring injury that bothered him for months, caused him to miss 10 games. He had not been the same player since then until recently. There were certainly some flashes of that. Even if he plays, you can't expect him to be anywhere near peak level. And if Haliburton's not awesome, the Pacers ain't winning against the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, that's the thing. They have one of the best backup point guards in the league in TJ McConnell, but he is not.
They got
able
a nice
to replicate.
backup point guard, but the only reason they were going to have any chance to win any games in this series is if Tyrese Haliburton was the best player on the court or right there with whoever is the best player on the court. He was awesome in game 1. They had a chance to win. We talked obviously a ton about that on Wednesday's pod. They didn't get it done. Without him on the court, this should be a sweep. The Celtics should go to Indiana. They should win 2 games. They should get this series over by Monday, assuming he doesn't play. Now, I hope he is able to play. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he's out there. But you just don't see guys with muscle injuries come back right away.
Especially recurring muscle injuries.
Recurring muscle injuries. And if you're ruled out of a conference finals game, when you haven't been in especially a guy like Haliburton who hasn't been there before, loves being on this kind of stage, it's a serious injury. He's not feeling good. Like, the guys aren't just casually saying, oh, yeah, I'm going to save it for later. Like, it was a 10-point game. It wasn't like they were losing by 35. So, yeah, I mean, look, that's been the story of the Celtics playoffs. They didn't see Jimmy Butler in the first round. They didn't see Jared Allen in the second round. Donovan Mitchell missed the final 2 games of that series. Now Haliburton played a game in at 3 quarters, and now he could be out for the series. But it doesn't matter in the end what their path looks like. The Celtics have to take advantage of this. They got to get this series over with as fast as possible and watch this slugfest that we're going to talk plenty about that you guys are at and put their feet up for 10 days. Like, they got to get this thing done by Monday.
But and the other look, there's 2 muscle injury questions that are going to dominate the storylines of this series. One is Haliburton going to be back on the floor? That's probably not. The other, will Kristaps Porzingis come back? And honestly, at this point, it's not will he come back to help them win this series. It's will he come back to, maybe get a little bit of the rust chipped off during this series, so he's not coming back off of a whatever, however many week layoff it would be, fresh into the finals.
Well, listen, our colleague, Agent Wojnarowski, reported for game 1 that he was looking at good possibility of coming back in game 4. And tonight, it was sort of lost in what happened, but Luke Cornett hurt his wrist in the first quarter, left the game. The Celtics claimed he was questionable with a wrist sprain, never came back to the bench, never was around at all. Now, I think that could be a pretty important injury, even though people don't talk a lot about Luke Cornett in the NBA Finals.
He's one of their 8 players. They've got 8 players. He's one of them.
He's been consistently in the rotation all year, especially whenever Porzingis has been out like he has been. And look, whoever comes out of the West, you're talking about 48 minutes of centers for both teams, and good centers. So you're going to need as much size as possible. So we'll see what happens with him. But the Celtics went very small the rest of this game. They played O'Shea Brissett, the former Pacer, or Jason Tatum at center the rest of the game. And
that was one thing. The Celtics did not take their starters out when the Pacers did. Tatum played 42 minutes.
The Celtics have messed up a lot at home the past couple of years, and they were not going to lose a game at home. But to the point about Porzingis, the dream scenario for the Celtics, in my opinion, you go to Indiana Saturday, you win this game Saturday, assuming again, we're operating the assumption Haliburton's done for the series. You win the game Saturday.
At least for Saturday. He's done for Saturday.
I'm just saying for the next 3 days. You win the game Saturday. Game 4, you have Porzingis play the Luke Cornett minutes off the bench, play 15 minutes. You win Monday, you get him some minutes, and then you get 10 days to get ready for the finals. That is, in my opinion, if they can get Porzingis back for game 4, how this will go. And whether Haliburton's healthy or not, the Celtics they got to get this over with. You can't mess around and have a game where you play an extra game or an extra 2 games. You have Jason Tatum sprain his ankle or somebody bang their knee or whatever. Like, the series, this was already a heavy underdog in the first place. Now Haliburton's out. Like, they have to get this taken care of.
And then they hope that this Mavs Wolves series goes 7. They'll have, a significant rest advantage. And that's the perfect path.
Looking at the way the Celtics actually played on the court tonight, Jaylen Brown with a brilliant game, 40 points, ties his playoff career high, very efficient. Then Bontemps comes into the postgame and beats his chest a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, with some cajoling, there was a lot of people here were very upset that Jaylen Brown did not make All-NBA, and he got asked about it several times.
What do they give a crap? He already got his money.
Just telling you how it went.
He
had a great answer.
Homers?
He had a great answer the first time it came up. He said, honestly, we're 2 wins away from the NBA Finals, so I don't have time to give a bleep, which I thoroughly enjoyed as an answer. And then our pal Gary Washburn asked him, essentially, do you take any motivation from seemingly being overlooked and people talking about the things you don't do? And he said, I mean, I watch guys get praised and anointed who I feel like are half as talented as me on either side of the ball. But at this point in my life, I just embrace it. It comes with being who I am and what I stand for, and I ain't into changing that. So I just come out and I'm grateful to step out onto the floor each and every night, put my best foot forward, and get better each and every year. Whether people appreciate it or not, It is.
Oh,
what it is.
whether people appreciate it or not,
Sidebar, Your Honor.
the man got
Sidebar.
all NBA last
Yes.
year and got the biggest contract in NBA history because
Yes.
of it.
I
Let's
think
not
it all
whine
worked
and
out
cry
just
for
fine.
Jaylen
I think
Brown.
Sidebar.
I think it worked out
Sidebar.
all fine for Jaylen Brown.
Sidebar. Many people complain about the media getting this voting power. Okay.
Mhm.
And I agree that on an individual basis, you can find media members whose votes don't look so good. And I admit I've made mistakes in the past. I will make mistakes in the future. However,
You regret your bonus votes?
my ballot is public. You can go look at it.
You can go find it.
Okay, Ignacio. Nice to see you.
Last year, Jaylen Brown was borderline All NBA pick. I did vote for Jaylen Brown last year. He made All NBA.
I think he made second team last year. I don't know if I would call that borderline. But.
Well, okay, borderline's the wrong word, but he wasn't a guy that was like absolutely for sure a lot. Like Ant Edwards this year was a lock. You know,
also
he gets
a second team pick. We have more to say on Ant later.
He gets, I believe, it was like $65 or $70 million bonus.
Oh, Bontemps been around
$40 million.
No,
$40 million bonus.
No. This was for the Supermax.
He's talking about Jaylen Brown, not
Jaylen Brown.
Oh,
Jaylen
I'm
Brown.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Jaylen Brown gets 60, 70 million. I don't remember the exact number.
Yeah.
This year, Jaylen Brown and Tyrese Haliburton are borderline. I voted for Jaylen Brown. I did not vote for Tyrese Haliburton. Tyrese Haliburton makes it. Okay. Jaylen Brown probably was the guy, you know, I had to squeeze and I picked Brown. I don't think it came down to Haliburton or Brown for me, but Haliburton or Brown was obviously very big. Tyrese gets it. He gets the $41 million. Okay. That's like $100 to $110 million players get. Media put them on the list. The media definitely, and that wasn't me in this case. I didn't put Haliburton on, but the media's votes got the bonuses, and I have let the bonus influence my vote in the past, and I'm sure people let their bonus the bonus influence their votes this time. Is there anybody going to complain about that? Is Jaylen going to complain about Tyrese getting his money or complain about him getting his money? Like, I think everybody turned out just fine.
I mean, he didn't. I wouldn't say he complained about that.
No, it sounds like there was a little Boston homer prodding. Is that what you're accusing?
I don't know.
him?
Maybe you say that, but like, he's like, there's people half as good as me. I mean,
the question was not about. It was less about All NBA, and it was more about him being criticized and overlooked.
Did you follow up with who are the people?
Well, he's
who were
overlooked
half as
in
good
what?
as you
He's overlooked
that
in.
get props?
I enjoyed the first answer, which was directly, did you take any motivation from missing out on All NBA? And the answer was, honestly, we're 2 wins away from the NBA Finals, so I don't have time to give a bleep. That to me was the answer about All NBA, which I enjoyed.
And Jaylen Brown was the others receiving votes who got the most votes this year.
And by the way,
did you ask any good questions tonight, or did you just let everybody else do it?
Listen, man, I wasn't asking questions about All NBA.
It is fun. By the way, it is fun to watch MacMahon command the. I mean, I've heard it. I hear it all the time
for years on this podcast.
I know.
He always wants the mic and never wants to be quiet.
And that's not true.
Situation.
Listen. I will say this: there's a thing in these playoff press conferences where there are people who are asking questions just so they can get on NBA TV. That's a thing. Don't say I'm one of those. Just because you were shrinking.
No, you just like to play extra noises while you're in the press conferences while you're
oh no, I don't.
Yeah.
All right, moving on.
MacMahon's brilliance is not recognized enough. I'm just going to say that. Anyway, obviously, I know how
sure the
MacMahon
IT department even agrees with that, let alone anybody else.
Not that I'm aware of how MacMahon operates in press conferences, but I'm just saying being on site here and watching MacMahon work in the press conferences is enjoyable.
Luke actually has had a sense of humor in press conferences lately, which is fun. Like the guy's got a sense of humor. He just rarely wants to share it with the media. He's actually had a sense of humor. Like,
what did Mark Davis say about the foul the other night? The
subtle but effective foul.
That is how MacMahon operates in these press conferences.
Is not
subtle. No,
what
he's
talking about?
No, he's got a light touch. He's got a light touch.
By the way,
he can sometimes use the blunt hammer, but he's got a light touch.
Can we bring this back to the Western Conference Finals? Because
Well,
talked
we
about
can.
We're
these.
talking about the Western
We
Conference
can.
Finals.
Speaking of subtle but effective, Chris Finch today, there were he had a humdinger of a little post practice between game 1 and 2 media availability where he said the Western Conference Finals have started. Not sure my guys got the memo, but they got it during the film session today, basically, and did some ripping of them. But then he talked about, like I asked him about, and we'll talk about this in detail later, about how much of Ant's 2 shots attempted in the restricted area were about him, and how much was it about the Mavericks defense. And he said, they're packing that restricted area. They've got 5 guys in there. Then he goes, many of them illegally. And, but we got to get downhill more often. He had another thing where he's talking about the defense on Luka, and he's talking about, there's, McDaniel's got to fight over screens. Many of them said illegally. He had one more. I forgot what it was. I think he said Luka committed a foul later, whatever. He had a few of those, and old John Kay from The Athletic beat me to it. When Finch was done, he said subtle but effective. It was subtle. Sort of. We'll see if it was effective.
Well, Finch is known for being pretty blunt about his team in this era of making sure everyone's kind and gentle. Finch has no problem.
He coaches hard.
Well, yeah, he coaches hard. He suffered the worst coaching injury of in the NBA history. By the way, from what I understand, the NBA basically is saying he's not allowed to stay on the sideline. He's got to stay behind the bench because they're afraid that he can't get out of the way of a player.
Yeah.
And that's
honestly, you don't want a player like crashing into one of his crutches.
I agree. I'm not saying it's controversial. I'm just saying it's a league decision from what I understand. But anyway, after game 1, Finch was not really hard on his team. It was pretty clear to me that the Mavericks game plan was to really pack it in. And encourage those 3-pointers. Luka really adopted that game plan when he just simply didn't move in the first quarter.
Jay Kidd, without naming his name, called Luke out for a lack of effort getting out. Basically said, we got to do a better job on the 3-point line, and a lot of that's effort. But yes, priority 1 is pack the paint.
I will say, unofficially, just with my eye, Luka gave up about 16 points on lazy defense in the first quarter.
His defense in the fourth quarter stunk. His defense in crunch time was as good as it's ever been in his career. He made huge plays.
What game was it, MacMahon, in the last round where there was that key jump ball at the end of the game?
The one that the ball squirted out, and it was with Lou Dort. I don't remember. Honestly, it was game 4. It was in Dallas. I want to say it was game 3.
So Hubie Brown was
won game 3.
Hubie Brown was calling that game. Luka won that jump ball. And Hubie goes, you know what? When he wants to be, Luka is quick as a cat.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely true.
And that was the thing.
He did not want to be in the first quarter last night.
No, but in the fourth quarter, and it was a little cat and mouse, actually. He did a great job. He was the low man. He cut off the roll to Gobert initially, right? And then the ball gets swung over to Conley. Conley's driving, and Luka did that thing where he kind of bluffed a contest, got Conley, knew Conley wanted the lob. It was a good job of understanding the scouting report. And then Conley's lob was a little bit low, but Luka got up. He was above the rim and deflected the lob to Gobert, as he ended up being a huge steal. I'm asking Luka about that. And Luka loves, when he makes a defense play, he loves being asked about his defense. He has the same joke every time. Second team all defense next year is what he always says. And I said something like, I think that's might have been the first time in your life you ever broke up a lob. And it's like, you didn't see me when I was young. And then I said, well, okay, the first time on a 10-foot hoop. And he said, okay, probably.
Again, subtle but effective with that jab.
But again, it was a case of when it came time to win the game, Luka locked in defensively. He had that, and then he had another one where he denied a McDaniel's drive and kind of got him where he was basically falling out of bounds and had to make a desperation pass, and Luka picked that off. But yeah, first quarter for Luka, not great. Fourth quarter, on both ends, he turned it on and he came through as the closer.
So what the Mavericks
that game? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, what the Mavericks did was they packed the paint. They played elbows and boxes. Basically, we're almost playing essentially a zone. and the Wolves took 49 threes. It was
49.
9 more than they'd taken in any playoff game the most of the season. And yeah, they made some in the first half, but they missed them in the second half. And Finch really didn't have a problem with it.
No, he actually said today, you know what? There were probably about 10 more threes we should have taken if we'd have made the right plays.
Right, but they're not built, and I understand the coach wants an open three, wants you to take it, but they're not constructed to be a high volume 3-point shooting team. And the Mavericks are going to play that percentage. And so
they need Ant getting downhill.
Yes.
He's maybe the best downhill player in the NBA.
Which is why I was surprised that Finch basically didn't say much about his team's performance after the game, other than we had no composure.
Oh, after he slept on it and watched the film, he did.
That's
I don't
what
know if
I'm
he slept
saying.
on it, but after he watched the film, he did.
That's my point. That's my grand point. He went after him in the film session today. And, there was something else, and look, MacMahon, you're the Mavericks expert. I'm a carpetbagger at this point. I've been to 2 Maverick playoff games so far this year.
Yeah, but you got good hair.
Some days. So there was a shift in Jason Kidd mentioned this in the post game. They thought that Luka ran out of energy a little bit, he didn't say that. He implied that he thought Luka ran out of energy a little bit at the end of some of the games in that Thunder series, and he's still dealing with that right knee injury.
Mm-hmm.
And so he cut Luka's minutes in the first half. He gave him an extra. Did he take him out an extra time, or did he just sort of cut 2 minutes off his playing time?
I think he took him out a little bit earlier, and I'd have to double check exactly how the rotation worked if he took him out a second time. But he definitely cut his minutes. And Luka had been playing well into the 40s, like 43, 45.
He was he averaged 42 in the last round, but that may have been there may have been the blowout. The one blowout might have padded that, but took it down a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think what the Mavericks want is to keep Luka under 20 minutes in the first half. And
Jay Kidd mentioned under 40 for the game, and they missed that, but he was at 40 and change, and Kyrie was at 40. So to get those guys out of the mid 40s, into the high 30s, low 40s.
Right, but the way and please correct me if I'm wrong here, but the way the Mavericks typically have been playing is Luka really is more aggressive early, and then you sort of see Kyrie sort of be the secondary player when Luka is resting.
Yeah, Luka's the guy who gets them going, and Kyrie's the closer, and those roles reversed.
Yes. And I'm not saying that they were like, okay, Luka, now go score 15 in the fourth, which is what he did. And he had that 7-0 burst that really changed the tenor of the game. But that strategy is definitely something that they came into the series with. I mean, I would say there are 2 strategy points: pack the paint, dare the three, make adjustments so that Luka is more fresh in the fourth quarter. And that included letting Kyrie attack in the first quarter. So I think those are 2 things the Wolves have to address. We'll see if the Mavs can stick with that, but I think those are the 2 things that you'll see them try to deal with in game 2.
Oh, look, talked about it going into the series. I picked Dallas to win the series because I believed that Kyrie and Luka would outplay Ant and Cat. And some completely insane things have been said about Anthony Edwards over the past few weeks. That's just the facts. For his great, including you the other day, when you just flatly declared he's better than Jason Tatum when he's not. Listen, Ant has had a tremendous playoffs. He had a great year. He's not as good a player as Jason Tatum. He's not on that level yet. He's certainly not as good as Luka Doncic. And you saw the issues he has, in particular, in this game. He's not a good creator for other players. He is sometimes. He makes some reads sometimes, but he really struggles with that.
He's okay. He'll create. He's not Luka. I'll give you that. He's not Luka.
He's okay. That's where he's got to get a lot.
Okay. Give me a.
What, he has like 7 or 8 assists? I mean,
okay. And there were a lot of time. Listen, he when he figures this part of the game out is when he's really going to ascend a level. It's the last thing he's got to do. Obviously, he's a great player. He's a sin. But what Dallas clearly was, he hasn't. The last 4 games, he's shooting 34% from the field. He's been under 20 points 3 of the last 4 games. He was 6 for 24 in game 7. He scored 1 basket inside the 2-point line or inside the 3-point line in game 1. Like, he was the reason they lost the game. He just wasn't good enough.
I agree with game 1.
Well, and he wasn't good. He wasn't good in game 5. He didn't shoot the ball well in game 7. Like, again, he's a 22-year-old player. He's going to be awesome. He is awesome. But there's still areas that he has to grow in. And I think the bet that Dallas made in this game 1 in particular was by packing the paint. They were saying, hey, as you both pointed out, this is not a good 3-point shooting team. We're going to dare them to shoot a lot of threes, and maybe they'll make some, but they're probably not going to make enough. That was the one bet. And the other bet was, you repeatedly saw, whether it was Jade McDaniels or Karl Towns or Ant, whenever those guys got in the paint and there were a lot of bodies around them, they had to make plays. They didn't do a good job of handling that. And the Mavs had a lot of length and a lot of limbs in the way, and they made the passing lanes hard for them to do stuff. And that, to me, is going to be the hard thing for them to try to adjust to going forward in the series. Because last round, you got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's one of the best pick-and-roll players in the league, never turns the ball over, usually makes great decisions. And he was able to manipulate that some, and it still wasn't good enough to win.
He was able to get cooking from the mid-range, which is where that's where he lives.
Mm-hmm.
But Jalen Williams had a tough series. He couldn't get to the paint. He couldn't get to the rim. Especially when Lively's in the game, and we'll hit on that Lively Gafford mix in a little bit, but like the Mavericks are long and athletic. Having said all that, couple things. One, the Ant Tatum thing. I had some angry little leprechauns reach out to me. Boy, there were some folks who probably had shamrock tattoos on their forehead, got the blood pressure boiling. Those shamrocks are spinning around. Who pointed out, I did mention that Ant had 38 and took Tatum's cookies down the stretch when he switched onto him defensively in a Wolves win. I did not recall immediately at the time, because we are doing these podcasts in the wee hours of the morning, plus I do tend to just flap my gums sometimes. So I did not recall that Tatum had 45 the next time they met and like 14 in overtime, and the Celtics won. I don't know, Bontemps. You're so damn good at interrupting. You could have chimed in with that. Like, that would have made me helped out, you bozo. So now that I got that little mini mea culpa out of the way, I still stand by the Ant's a better player than
Bontemps,
Tatum.
it was your fault. It was your fault.
I
just wanted to make sure that was
my fault.
Yeah.
All my fault.
Don't let it happen again.
Sometime with some good information. But having said all that, Ant did stink it up in game 1. He had no gas in the tank a couple days off of that game 7 20-point comeback on the road against the defending champs. He got cooked by Kyrie Irving after declaring for the world, hey, I got Kyrie. Yeah, you got Kyrie, buddy. Oh, your hands are full on that one.
Can we also briefly talk about the fact that they all weirdly talked about how tired they were after the game? That was very strange.
They were. They talked about it, and they looked like it.
Yeah,
I mean,
it wasn't just
tired.
Like, I agree. They had 2 days off.
Dude, there was also the play, and I'm working on this story about these Luka 40, 50, 60-foot bombs. There's one of those off a made bucket, and Luka catches the inbounds pass. He's free throw line extended on the left side of the floor, looks across. Kyrie's even with him on the opposite side of the floor. They make eye contact. And basically, the eye contact, the nonverbal communication is Ant's gassed. He ain't going to sprint back, go. And Luka, just flicks his wrist. And next thing you know, 60 feet down the floor, Kyrie catches it in stride, lays it in. And Ant brought up that play without prompting and said, that can't happen. I was exhausted, man. But, dude, the other thing that can't happen, the most dynamic finisher in the NBA cannot have 2 attempts in the restricted area in an entire playoff game. I don't give a crap how much they're packing the paint. He has to attack. He has to get in there. Even if he's not finishing, if he is challenging the rim protector, whether it's Gafford or Lively, give Gobert a chance to clean it up. A lot of times a missed layup's not a bad play because it's a putback opportunity. If Ant's not attacking, then this ain't going to be a long series.
In fairness, Ant did also throw a 60-foot pass in this game. He was throwing it at a teammate who was 30 feet away, but he did throw it 60 feet.
Yes. That thing hit about the 14th row. That was impressive.
First off, I have to admit that fan, I counted, he was in the 5th row. He caught it. It is not something that you're normally preparing for as a basketball coming at your chest in the 5th row.
I'm going to say this, though. If you catch it, you got to shoot it. Let it go. Let it fly. It should have been a 50th 3-point attempt for the Wolves, but that fan,
Well,
that fan choked.
well, listen, Ant over the last 4 games, again, going back to game 5 of the conference finals, is 13 for 36 from 2. Like that's not going to get it done. And
It's a
again,
great point.
you
Great
mentioned
point.
him before. You mentioned him before. The play. I mean, Daniel Gafford played well. Derek Lively's play in these
Gafford didn't
playoffs.
play great.
Well, I mean, he was still deterring shots at the rim and was a presence. I'm not, but
Yeah.
the story, the real point here, the way Derek Lively has played in these playoffs, both being a rookie and obviously with the personal stuff he's going through, has been absolutely unbelievable. And he was the dominant force in this game in the fourth quarter. With Luka Doncic making ridiculous plays on offense, and it was Derek Lively either cleaning up at the rim whenever Luka rarely missed, or completely changing the trajectory of all sorts of plays at the other end defensively. It was amazing to watch, to see him go out there in the fourth quarter of a conference finals game as a rookie, on top of all the other stuff, play the way he did. It was unbelievable stuff, and it's the game changer for Dallas.
I'll tell you
They
what,
could
when
have added
you
a
look at
couple of-
Lively, when you look at
Mhm.
Lively, MacMahon, you see length, energy, athleticism,
Mhm.
no fear. That's pretty
Character,
good.
Smarts.
That too, I'm sure that I don't know, but all of those things help when you're playing with Luka and Kyrie.
Yeah.
As all lots of check marks.
It
on
reminds
that
me
list.
of a young Tyson Chandler.
You
Well,
know
that's
what?
the
I was
guy-
thinking that
That's
too.
awesome.
I was
Tyson's
thinking that
been
too.
working with him all year long, and that's like, when he worked out for the Mavericks, Tyson came to the gym the next day, and Nico Harrison and Michael Finley, Jay Kidd, like, man, you should have been here yesterday. But no, those guys, they had, like, Tyson's not officially part of the Maverick staff, but he shows up a lot to practices. He's like a sounding board, a mentor for Lively.
That's who he reminds me of, though. He's
Listen.
because young Tyson, especially, was super athletic, could fly around and Tyson
And
hell of a player. I mean,
runs.
Lively's a monster.
He runs the floor, and the thing about Lively, I don't think he's going to have Dwight Howard disease where he decides, oh, yeah, I've got to get post ups, I've got to get touches. They do think he has a chance to become a spot up 3-point shooter, which would just be like icing on the cake. Can you imagine like a bouncy version of Brooke Lopez? I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But even if he never makes a 3-pointer in his career, his ability to run, put pressure on the rim offensively and finish, protect the rim defensively, and rebound, like he is a massive, massive impact player. That they tanked to get the pick, to protect the pick, to get him. They paid a $750,000 fine. You could add a couple of zeros to that fine. It would have been worth it for the Mavericks.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like if you say they just got Tyson Chandler for the next 10 years, like that, I mean, that could be worth a couple $100 million with contracts by the time he's done.
And they need to bump his minutes up. He has the Mavs' best plus minus. I think it's plus 106 now. In the playoffs.
Can I ask you just a direct question about that? Why have they not gone back to him starting?
So honestly, look, they switched the starting lineup. They lost 5 out of 6 coming out of the All-Star break. They switched the starting lineup, and that's when they put Gafford in the starting lineup. And more importantly, they put Derek Jones in for Josh Green. They won 16 of their next 18 before taking the last 2 games of the regular season off. Obviously they finished the first round series, the second round series in 6. I think changing the starting lineup sends a message to the team that we're not good enough doing what we've been doing. We have to make a drastic change. I just think from a psychological standpoint, that's dicey. I think you risk. I don't think Gafford is a powder, but I think you risk losing him in that situation. I just don't think you make that kind of change when things are going as well as they've been going. Now, I do think that tag team, the minutes need to be tilted heavily toward Lively.
But it's hard to do that. It's hard to do that
when you don't start.
Well,
no, it's not. Play Gafford 3 minutes to start the game. Lively 6.
Come on, buddy. You're not going to take a guy out 3 minutes into a game.
They do sometimes. They do. They've done that. Play Gafford 18 minutes. Play Lively 30. Here's a simple fact. Best plus minus in the playoffs for the Mavs, Lively. Worst, Gafford. Lively needs to play more minutes.
That's the thing though. Like you could say, like in a video game, have them come out and play in 3-minute increments here and there, but like that's not that it would just make a lot more sense if Lively played in a couple longer stints around Gafford playing and you got to the 30 and 18. We agree completely that they need to get to the 30-18. And look, maybe they wait till they lose a game. Maybe you lose game 2 and then you do it. But like, it's hard to really wrap your head around. Okay, we're going to repeatedly play this guy for 16 minutes in a row, 18 minutes in a row. Going to have him play 12 minutes, come out for 2, then come back in. Like, just do what you want to do, which is start him. Just get to that place.
The minutes have been pretty close to even. Like the one time he played 30, I'd have to double check. I think it's the one time he played 30 in the playoffs. Was game 6 in OKC where he subbed in early in the second half and just didn't come out. And I've asked, I was asking at practice today, just talking to people off to the side, hey, do you feel like there might be diminishing returns if you bump his minutes up into the 30s? And I didn't get any affirmatives on that. But it is like, it's a high energy position. Honestly, the other thing on the flip side, how many minutes can Gobert play? Can he play 40? I know he feels he can. Can he play 42? I think they need to.
The plus minus was stark.
Plus 10 Gobert in 37 minutes, 36 and change. Minus 13 in the 11 plus that he was off.
I don't have the stat in front of me, but they're shooting in the paint.
14 of 14 in dunks and layups in the 11 plus minutes Gobert was off the floor. It's a layup line when Gobert's not in there.
It doesn't have to be. They obviously can do better than
I'm gonna go around the corner. I gotta go see if Draymond agrees with me. I'm not sure he will, but
I think we know the answer on that. How many of those minutes were with Luka out there and Gobert on the bench in that game 1?
I mean, what do I look like? A guy does prep?
I thought you might know.
No, I honestly don't know, but I think the Wolves got to figure out how much they can bump Gobert's minutes up. And again, it's tough because you're talking about 7-foot guys anchoring defenses, setting a ton of screens, and like their job is to do a lot of grueling physical work and then sprint the floor both ways.
Yeah. All right. Well, I would expect the Wolves to, maybe the Mavs still win and go up 2-0, but I would expect the Wolves to have a different disposition, to use a word that you hear from coaches.
Oh, that's a Carlisle favorite. Reminds me. I think I've told you the story before. Carlisle was doing that disposition thing, and this was right after the year they won the championship, and then they, were going through like the very obvious, we're going to strip this team down thing. Jet Terry knew it was his last year, so I go in the locker room and I say, Rick's talking about disposition. What do you think? Jet said, disposition, dat position. I don't know what any of that means.
Jet was at game 1 the other night, sitting with
Jason Davis' family. One of the all-time moves, and I've been in the NBA. The dude gets a Larry O'Brien tattoo, and then wins the Larry O'Brien trophy.
The other thing, they were down 2-1 in that series. This taught me a lot about the value of irrational confidence for an NBA player. They're down 2-1 in that series, the 11 finals. And if you remember, LeBron had shut him down in crunch time. LeBron,
I remember this vividly.
Shut him down
vividly.
And so we're talking to Jet. I think it was game 4 shoot around, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like, "I want to see him do that for 7 games. He can't do that for seven games." I'm like, what? This guy is crazy. Jet hit about a 28-foot game winner that night, or dagger, and obviously the Mavs win the series. It's a fine line between kind of knowing who you are and having irrational confidence. But
I remember
for him.
One of my memories about that series was Dirk was so sick. He had like that summer cold, and he's it was 135 degrees in Texas, which I think that's what I'm headed for this weekend, MacMahon.
Yes,
and Dirk was up on the podium. Dirk always took the mic in his hand. He didn't, and he had like a hood on, and he was like shivering up there on the podium, and he's like getting through this with coughs and everything like that. Post COVID, we would never have allowed it. We would have been whoa, stand back. And then the next day at practice, LeBron and D Wade were like walking in front of the cameras and like pretending to cough. I mean, first off,
Yeah.
as if Dirk is known as someone who would pretend he was 6. Secondly, he cooked him.
Yeah. Well, and that's what when we asked Dirk about that in Miami before the next game, that's basically what he said. He said, I've never been one to fake an illness or an injury. And I think he might have been hinting at something there. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Anyway,
that was a fun series.
It sure was. Well, listen, the one other thing we sort of touched on and we didn't hit on completely is the Wolves won the 3-point line by 36 points in game 1 and they lost.
That's
That
tough
is
to
a
do.
huge red flag going forward. Because it's hard to see why the paint's going to get more open for him.
I agree, but
I don't think the paint's getting more open. I do think Ant.
I'm sure he's going to take more than
You know what?
4
You know what
two-point
Ant needs to
shots.
do? You know what Ant needs to do? He needs to bring his ass. He did not in game 1. Bring your ass, Ant.
All right, I couldn't say it better. Before we go, it's time for Cavs Corner.
Presented by
JB Bickerstaff's guaranteed contract.
Turnkey Enterprises. Brought to you by Turnkey Enterprises. Looking for a new coach.
Man, I feel bad for Just Business Bickerstaff. This is bull. I'm sorry, dude. The man did a damn good job in Cleveland, and because somebody doesn't like him, he gets the boot.
It was a little bit more complicated than that, but I can certainly see why a lot of people feel that way. I mean, if you look at the last 4 years, they were, lottery, play-in, playoffs, second round, coach fired.
Wait, progress, peace out.
Yep. And, you could tell by the release, and Kobe Altman's, the president's going to have a press conference on Friday. I expect him to show, express in certain ways that this was a very tough decision, but I guess it doesn't matter. They still fired him. They're taking some criticism for it. They will completely protect Donovan, and Donovan himself you won't find anything on the record, and you won't eventually see anything on the record. I doubt.
I mean, Donovan might not even know about it yet. Has he checked his phone today?
I think Donovan knew about it before he left Cleveland, but
how could that be?
Let me just be clear. I don't think they decided or told him before. I think just the writing was on the wall, and Donovan was certainly aware.
The writing was on the wall when the Celtics series ended.
Whose handwriting was the writing in?
Look, here's the thing. At the end of the day, the Cavs, Donovan didn't ask for him to be fired. I know, I see this all the time. I hear this from fans, and I mean, it's never that cut and dry. You know how a star player feels about the coach by the way they interact over 6 months, not over a 6-minute exit interview. Okay.
Listen, after game 5, JB Bickerstaff's on the podium talking about how hard the year was. Max Strus is in the locker room talking about how hard the year was. Like, this was not a locker room that was celebrating winning a playoff series without LeBron for the first time in 30 years. Like, it just wasn't. It wasn't a year like that. It was not. It was not the easiest year to get through on a lot of fronts. They had a lot of injuries they dealt with. There was obviously some guys who didn't, Darius Garland certainly did not play to the level that he would like to play to. They tanked to get this Orlando matchup to get out of the first round, then did everything they could to lose that series. Like, this was not like, this was just not like,
but moving forward,
lollipops and they won a series and everything's great.
Right. But this is more about moving forward. Moving forward, the Cavs, whether they will articulate this or not, the Cavs believe that their chances of re-signing Donovan Mitchell are increased by a coaching change. Yeah. I don't know if they're going to say that, but that's just the truth. And I don't expect them to say it. And I don't expect Donovan to ever say that. But there's just no way around it. That's just the truth.
Well, yeah. Did Donovan Mitchell go in and say, I want this guy gone? I know that didn't happen. But at the same time, if he had said, I want JB Bickerstaff to be the coach of the team, then JB would be the coach.
Right. Actions over words. Okay.
I mean, it's the same, like Rick Carlisle wasn't fired in Dallas.
That's right.
But he asked for an extension, was told it ain't coming. So, like, he knew he was the end.
And
was
honestly,
near. And why? Because Luka didn't ask for him to leave, but they knew Luka didn't want to play for him anymore.
I think the Rick Carlisle situation in Dallas is a very good analog for the JB Bickerstaff situation in Cleveland. I think that is the perfect way to look at it. That from a personality standpoint, It just ultimately wasn't the right mix for everybody involved. So they move on.
I also think that JB, while he instilled an identity for that team to defend, and that was what powered their improvement. They had a lot of other things that happened and some roster moves, and obviously the Donovan trade changed a lot of things. Their defensive identity is why they improved.
Mm-hmm.
And offensively, the Cavs suffered from not having their best players play well together. Going forward, yeah.
I mean, no, well, look, there's two obvious things to look at here. Darius Garland regressed and Evan Mobley stagnated.
Yes.
Like that's that. If you want to look at one thing as to why the Cavs are going to have a new coach, it's because of that specific things. The two young cornerstone guys of their team were struggling. And I shouldn't say Mobley was struggling, but Mobley has not taken the steps forward that, look, he showed, we talked about it during that series with Jared Allen out. He showed he's got the capability to do some more stuff, but there was no bringing that out of him. And whoever they hire
as a power forward because it's not his position.
Well, listen, he has not developed really overall as an offensive player over the last 3 years. He's more or less doing the same stuff he was doing as a rookie. And a lot of that's because there wasn't really there wasn't a lot of emphasis on having him do more stuff or having him expand his game at all. He wasn't running any pop pick and rolls. He wasn't doing any of that kind of stuff. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the first name that Woj brought up was Kenny Atkinson, who coached under Mike D'Antoni, coached under Mike Budenholzer, now coaches under Steve Kerr. And if he is hired as the coach, would be obviously a guy who would be tasked to come in and upgrade this offense, and in particular,
and the
improve Darius Garland and get Evan Mobley's play up.
Right. And the second name was James Borrego, who, when he was in Charlotte as the head coach, had one of the best offenses in the league. He did not have a good defense, which is one of the reasons why he was fired, although he had bad defensive personnel. I will say this. In 3 weeks, the Cavs are going to meet with Donovan Mitchell sometime-ish at the end of the finals. And in that meeting, there's going to probably be 3 things that are on the agenda. One, they're going to offer him a $200 million extension, very kindly, with a lot of smiles and hope. 2, you would like to think that the new head coach would be hired by that time and would have for him an idea of how he wants to play, how it would affect him and how it would affect other players. And 3, a concept of what they're going to do for the roster for this offseason. A big focus on that will be Darius Garland, because while Darius Garland has not asked for a trade, the Darius Garland-Donovan Mitchell tandem, while I don't think there's any personal issues there, I don't think that there's any personal animus. I don't think Darius has played his best. I don't think Donovan gets as much support from that as he could. And I don't think that either of them necessarily feel like that should be unbreakable.
That's the same fit we've talked about all year. The 2 non-shooting bigs and the 2 small ball dominant guards.
Right. So you want to hear
awkward fit.
You want to hear maybe the new head coach will have an idea. Like, look, this is how we're going to play. Mike D'Antoni made James Harden and Chris Paul work. Not that I think those are comparable players. But
I was going to say James Harden's not a small guard.
That's true. So anyway, I think
but 2 ball dominant players. But yes,
right. So I think the Cavs have. This is step 1. Step 2 is get some clarity from Don. Well, step 2 is hire the coach. Step 3 is get some clarity from Donovan, and then they could make some major transactions over the summer, including Evan Mobley. They got to get him extended, and that's it's not a small consideration. But they're going to take some fire for firing a coach, and they know that, and they're going to have to just deal with it, and that's life in the NBA. And JB will probably get another chance to be a head coach, maybe even soon. I do think Brian O'Keefe has a very good chance of keeping that job.
Brian Keefe.
Brian Keefe has
a very good. What's his middle name? It might start with an O.
Well, that's
Oliver.
That's Oscar? That was like Sarah Palin. She always should call him O Biden. She accidentally called Joe Biden O Biden for some reason. Anyway, Brian Keefe has a very good chance to keep that job.
First Palin reference on the pod.
I understand, but just putting in the extraneous O, that was why I was making fun of myself. I do, but I think JB Bickerstaff.
There were a lot of extraneous O's in that one Luka presser in OKC.
Long, too. They were long and drawn out. All right, on that note, MacMahon, it's time to get some rest. Got to have game 2 tomorrow. Bontemps, it's off to Indy for Indy 500 weekend. I'm sure you're going to love it.
It's going to be great. See if Tyrese Haliburton can find a new hamstring.
All right. Thank you to Jackson, our producer. Thank you to MacMahon and Bontemps. Thank you for listening and watching the Hoop Collective. We'll talk to you next week.
Adios, amigos.